Hello, Life Vantage. This is Darren Jensen. We're coming to you live from our Indianapolis event, our biohacking event here. And I've got with me Dr. Michael Breus, who's an expert in sleep. And we're glad to have him with us today. Before we get started, as we normally always do, we give away some of our logo gear. This is a cool hoodie. It's with biohacking on it, a biohacker hoodie. So if you'd like to be in the drawing to receive one of these, just comment in the comment section with your name, your city, your state, or country where applicable, and we'll get you one of these. All right, with that said, let me read you a little bit about Dr. Breus's background. So Dr. Michael Breus, he is a clinical psychologist and both a diplomat of the American Board of Sleep Medicine and a fellow of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. He was one of the youngest people to have passed the board at age 31 with a specialty in sleep disorders. He is one of only 168 psychologists in the world with his credentials and distinction. Dr. Breus is on the clinical advisory board of the Dr. Oz Show and appears regularly on the show. And Dr. Breus currently resides outside of Los Angeles and maintains a private practice in that area.
I do.
Well, thank you for joining us on our Facebook
thanks
Live
for
today.
having me.
Well, you just finished a presentation. We had about 5,000 people here at our event.
It was awesome, by the way.
Well, you were awesome. I mean, our
Thanks.
people really liked what you're presenting, and I think so many people have challenges with sleep.
Yes.
That what you were talking about was was very appropriate. So I was taking notes feverishly on my phone, and I didn't have a printer here in this facility, so I have them here on my phone. So I'm just going to go through some of my notes and let's
Absolutely.
talk to them, because I mean it was a fascinating presentation. Now, a couple of the things that I liked that you said was that you started looking at some of the common beliefs that we have about sleep.
Right.
And you were trying to sort through fact from fiction.
Exactly.
Why don't you talk to us about what is fact and what is fiction in sleep?
Sure. So one of the biggest that I hear all the time is the 8-hour myth, right?
Okay.
So everybody's got to sleep 8 hours. So first of all, that's not true. Let's just get that right out there. If you just looked at it from a math perspective, we know that the average sleep cycle is 90 minutes long, and that the average person has 5 of those. So 5 times 90 is 450 minutes, divided by 60 is only 7.5 hours. So right there, 8 hours doesn't match up to what we know is the length and the number of sleep cycles. But even more so, if you're getting good, consistent sleep, your body actually needs less and less of it. So as an adult, I go to bed around midnight and I wake up around 6:30. So I sleep 6.5 hours. I'm the sleep doctor, right? And I sleep only 6.5 hours to 7 hours. But that's what works for me. And so the message I want to give everybody out there is don't kill yourself to try to get 8 hours, because you might not actually need 8 hours of sleep. Consistent sleep is actually much better than trying to get a length of sleep. So if you can consistently get 6.5 to 7, that's going to be a good number for you.
Well, let me ask you about that consistency. Okay, so one of the trends that we're looking at, being a health company, is the rise of the health-activated individual. It's people that really pay a lot of attention and biohack their own health. And for instance, a lot of people are wearing Fitbits at night that monitor sleep. I know that I use this ring. It's a Motif, and I really like it because I hate wearing a watch at night. But it's tracking my sleep, and when I go through and I look at what my sleep patterns are, it doesn't look consistent to me. It looks like I'm up, and then I mean, it's all jagged, and I'm like, does that even make sense? So what does that mean? I mean,
okay, so I've got a whole idea surrounding sleep trackers. So first of all, sleep's a pretty complicated process. So most of the tracking companies were tracking something else before they started tracking sleep.
Paces,
right?
Heartbeat.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and those are very easy things to measure, like weight and calorie and steps and things like that. But when you wake up in the morning and somebody says, how did you sleep? You don't say a 36, right? Or a 65 or a 97, because there's really not a great metric for it. So first of all, we have to find companies that are accurate in their assessment of sleep. So that's number one, is trying to find the right accurate tracker. So you're looking for a company that's going to have a sleep history, that's been involved in sleep, that really understands sleep, has sleep scientists involved, things like that. Step one. But step number two.
Are there any good ones out there?
I'll tell you the two that I've found that have been the best. One is called the Sleep Score Max.
Okay.
And full transparency, they've asked me to be on their advisory board because I like their company so much.
All right.
But they have, it's a 100% sleep company. They don't track anything but sleep, and I like that aspect on it.
Okay, good.
The other thing that's important is the thing that drives me crazy is somebody comes up to me and they say, what does my sleep look like, Dr. Breus, off of their phone, right? And I say, well, I don't really know what it is because we don't have anything to measure it against. So many of these companies, they'll send you a tracker or you get information and you say to yourself, well, who cares if I got 17 minutes of REM? Like, what does it mean? Right? So what I like is a comparison. So I'm 50, so what the Sleep Score Max does is it actually will compare my sleep to a male age 50. So now I've got a yardstick by which to compare my sleep. That gets a little bit better, but really where the money is, in my mind, is when you actually get information that's personalized based on your previous night's sleep. So when you're looking for a company that's got a history with sleep, that gives you a comparison to somebody, maybe your age and gender, and then also gives you tips that are personalized to your sleep. That's where I think we really see the value in these tracking mechanisms.
Okay. So you were, and I interrupted you because you said you were saying something about the first part and then there was a second part. I'm not sure if I remember.
Oh no, I went through 1, 2, 3.
Okay, good. So we were talking about myths, and you said the first myth is
8 hours.
You don't necessarily need 8 hours.
Yeah.
Are there any other myths that are out there?
There are a bunch. So one of the ones that I talked about actually on stage had to do with food and sleep, right? And so people all the time say, well, I heard that turkey makes me feel sleepy, right? Because of the thing called tryptophan in it.
But it does. I don't know why.
So I can tell you why. So first of all, the reason you're tired after Thanksgiving has nothing to do with turkey. You'd actually have to eat a 26-pound turkey.
It ain't gonna happen.
No. Even in my best days in college, I couldn't eat a 26-pound turkey.
Yeah.
So to get enough tryptophan. The reason you're so tired after Thanksgiving is because you've been making this holiday meal for days and days and days. Your in-laws are probably driving you nuts, and they're finally leaving, and you're just so relaxed and relieved that you're able to get there. Warm milk is another one. A lot of people say, well, what about warm milk? It's also got tryptophan. You'd have to drink 1.5 gallons of warm milk. You know, and that's just gross, right? That's just gross, guys. Yeah. But what it turns out is whoever was giving you the warm milk, your grandmother, your mother, somebody who was very caring and loving in your life, you make that association. And so it's really the association and the psychology behind it, not necessarily the milk itself. So those are examples of myths. Another one is that it's bad to take a nap. Right? I'm here to tell you there's nothing wrong with taking a nap, unless you have insomnia. If you do have insomnia, napping is not a good idea because it lowers your sleep drive or your ability to fall asleep at night. But there's nothing wrong with taking a short nap. My favorite are 25 minutes or less. So I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but have you ever taken a nap and felt worse, not better?
Yeah, almost always. If I take a nap, I just feel groggy for so long.
Exactly. So you're napping too long.
Okay.
Right? So if you nap 25 minutes or less, you don't get into stage 3-4 sleep, which is the part that makes you feel really, really groggy, and you'll actually get refreshed from your nap depending upon what time you take it. Now, I'm going to also tell everybody about a nap hack, because we're all here about biohacking. We're all here to talk about all this kind of stuff. So I created a nap that I call the Napa Latte. All right? So you take a cup of drip coffee, black drip coffee, 6 ounces, put in 3 ice cubes. Drink the whole thing as quickly as you can. Don't worry about the ice. It's just to cool it down. Then close your eyes and take a 25-minute nap. You'll get enough stage 1 and stage 2 sleep to lower something called adenosine in your brain, but caffeine fits in right where the adenosine would in your brain, and it blocks that sleepiness. You're good for 4 hours, guaranteed. Wow. So that I call it the Napa Latte. It's definitely something you guys can check out.
Napa Latte, I like that. Any others that you can think of, or is that some of the main myths that are out there?
Well, you know, that's some of the main ones that are out there, but you know, one of the big things that people also don't understand is the power of light. So it turns out that light is one of the biggest things to affect our ability to produce melatonin. So remember, everybody, melatonin is that key that starts the engine for sleep. So you really want to make sure that melatonin is flowing when you want it to be and not when you don't want it to be. So in the morning time, if you can get sunlight, that will actually help reduce some of that morning fog that a lot of people experience. And at night, you want to have low levels of light. And even in some cases, there are now commercially available light bulbs or glasses that you can use to block the blue light. So using those things can actually be very, very important and can condense the amount of sleep that you might need and increase the quality.
Well, how has sleep changed? Because when you're talking about light and that light has such a powerful effect on sleep, I know for me and like my wife, part of our kind of calming down phase is we'll sit there and we'll read our books on our phones or on our Kindles or whatever. But
No,
I can imagine
stop,
that light
stop.
is probably, yeah, messing this up.
So it's a proximity issue for number
Okay.
one. So I'm the only sleep specialist I think ever to say it's okay to sleep with the TV on.
Okay.
I think I'm the only guy that says this. So my wife falls asleep with the television on and has since ever since we've known each other. But she really listens to it out of the corner of her ear, right? And so what's going on is her eyes are closed and she's listening. It's just enough of a distraction to allow her to fall asleep. 95% of televisions have a timer in the software now.
Yeah, they
just
do.
go to the timer. You can set it for 45 minutes if it bothers you. If it doesn't bother you, it's not going to hurt you. But the proximity of the TV is all the way across the room, so the light doesn't have nearly as big an effect. However, if you have a phone right here,
Oh, it's bright,
or
right in your eyes.
or a
Yeah.
tablet or a laptop, and you're watching, Game of Thrones or whatever it is you happen to be watching, it's going to have, number one, an emotional component to it. Like if you're playing Candy Crush and you're trying to get your high score.
I hate it when I have to buy something on that because I can't get
Right,
past that level,
exactly.
yeah, at night.
Right, so that kind of jacks you up and makes it hard to sleep. Plus, the light is very, very close. So I say TV okay, but handheld devices not so good. And there was actually a study that just came out this week showing that the night shift, which is the software that now is being used in some of these devices, actually does not help with melatonin at all.
Well, okay, so you're talking about the TV light is okay.
Yep.
Now, I've heard it in the past, and I'm not an expert on sleep by any means, but I've heard that if there's any type of light in the room, it can disrupt the learning potential of children or something. What is that all about?
So kids are very different than adults. So first of all, when we think about light, remember it turns off the melatonin faucet in our brain. And during sleep is when our memory really starts to consolidate. So we take information from our short-term memory and put it into our long-term memory. And light prevents that from going on because it prevents sleep. So for kids, it's really good to have as many electronics out of the bedroom as you possibly can. Now I know that can be hard because kids use their computers for school or their phone for social media, but in our house, we kind of have an electronic curfew about an hour before they go to bed. So if my son, who's 16, is going to bed at 10, around 9 o'clock, we say it's time for the electronic curfew. Now, is that easy to institute? I got a 16-year-old boy, it's not so easy to institute, so I actually go and turn off the router in my house.
You can time those. Yeah, you can
Right,
time.
click,
Yep.
boom, we're down. And he's learned very quickly that that's kind of what we're going to be doing. And now it's really interesting is he kind of appreciates it. So if he goes to spend the night at a buddy's house or whatever and internet is going all night long, he's kind of like, yeah, I want to put my phone away and get some rest.
Yeah, I have 5 kids. Some of them are older now, but I do have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old.
Yeah, we're in the same boat.
And yeah, and what we've done is that, similar to you, we noticed that they didn't get good enough sleep when they left their electronics in their room.
Yep.
So what we've done is we instituted the same curfew, but they bring their electronics down to our room and we plug them in and we keep them down there because if not, they're always tempted. You can
Super
turn the
tempted.
router off,
Right.
but they're still LTE. And
Right,
on their
they'll
phone.
figure it
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
They'll figure it out. Absolutely.
And so we just get rid of it, and now I think they appreciate it too.
I think they do. I think they don't like the discipline at first, but also once they see, it's kind of nice to kind of remove yourself from all that social stimulus and all that information coming in, and you don't need it at night.
I actually need a curfew put on me because you get into what do they call it, a scroll hold on Facebook, just going through it.
Right.
And yeah, I find that disrupts my sleep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, you were saying that people don't require the same amount of sleep always. For me, it's always been, I think, similar to what you were saying with you. Typically 6.5 hours is good for me. But what about people who travel a lot? For instance, I normally live in Utah, so that's mountain, and we're in Indianapolis, which is eastern. And I really find that 2-hour shift is worse than when I go to Asia and it's a 12-hour shift.
Right.
Because that 2 hours, it's just, how do you get over jet lag?
Okay, so I use 3 to 4 different components for jet lag,
Okay.
and it depends on, there's a couple of different factors. So one, it depends on the direction of travel.
Okay.
So
it does.
It does.
Yeah, I'm curious to understand why, because for me, always going west was easy, east was terrible.
Yeah, so the saying that I tell people is east is least and west is best.
Okay.
Right? So you already said it for me,
Yeah.
which is perfect. So here's what happens is when you're traveling, so let's make it simple. Let's say you're going from New York to LA, right? Traveling west. All you're asking your body to do is stay up later. Right, because of the time zone differences there. However, if you're going from Los Angeles to New York, you're asking your body to go to bed earlier. So if I told you go to bed at 7:30 tonight, it's probably not going to happen,
No.
right? So that's the difference, is the direction of travel has a big factor on you. Also, the number of time zones that you cross. It turns out that your body will naturally adjust one time zone per day. So if you're only going to be gone for 2 or 3 days, it almost doesn't make sense to try to adjust your schedule. But if you're going to be gone longer than that, and a trip to Asia would be an example of that, then I actually create jet lag schedules for people where I pick the timing of the flight, I pick when should they nap on the flight, and I pick when they should wake up, when they should get their light exposure. And I can reduce jet lag down to almost nothing, depending upon the number of time zones. I had a Saudi Arabian princess is one of my patients, and she would come from Saudi Arabia to Los Angeles, and she would have 7 or 8 days of jet lag because she was crossing 14 time zones, and we got it down to a half a day.
Wow.
Which is pretty
That's
cool.
Good. Yeah,
so how do we do
good.
it? We use light therapy and melatonin. So melatonin, for people who don't know it, is a hormone, and it's available, commercially available. You want to get between 0.5 and 1.5 milligrams. 95% of melatonin is sold in an overdosage format, 3, 5, or 10 milligrams. Way too much. Okay. 0.5 milligram to 1.5 milligrams taken 90 minutes before you want to go to bed. So in your situation, if you're traveling for 2 hours, right, depending upon what direction you're traveling in, you might take your melatonin an hour to an hour and a half before you want to go to bed in your new destination, and that will help peak your melatonin levels and bring your body that way. Then in the morning, use bright light to turn off the melatonin faucet, right? So we're turning it on at night and we're turning it off in the morning by using melatonin at night and light in the morning. And that's the basics behind it. We also have strategically placed caffeine for people, depending upon the number of time zones, as well as strategic napping.
Okay, another big question I have, other than with the jet lag, I know that a lot of people run into hangovers.
Yes.
Okay, so I know that you spoke to us here a little while ago about hangovers. What are they caused by, and how do you overcome those?
So when you talk about drinking, and drinking alcohol in particular, alcohol is a diuretic. So once you start going to the bathroom, you just keep going and going and going, and so you really become fairly dehydrated. So one technique I have people use is what I call a glass for a glass. So for every glass of alcohol, you have 1 glass of water, right? So number 1, it fills up your stomach. Number 2, it keeps you from being dehydrated. Second thing to remember is that the average human body, it takes them approximately 1 hour to digest 1 alcoholic beverage. Okay. So if you have a couple of glasses of wine or beer with dinner, you want to give, let's say you stop at 8, then you want to give yourself 2 hours and not have lights out until 10. Otherwise, it's going to affect your sleep. We now know that there's a really big difference between going to sleep and passing out, right? And so passing out involves alcohol too close to bedtime. Alcohol may make you feel sleepy, but believe it or not, it keeps you out of the deeper stages of sleep, stages 3 and 4, which is that physical restorative sleep, and that's part of the reason that you feel so bad. The other part is dehydration. So by doing the glass for a glass and then doing the timing, you can avoid a hangover almost completely. A couple other really interesting tricks: coconut water. There's been 2 studies to show that that's been very helpful, and also taking magnesium and vitamin B the next day to replace is also a really good idea, and it helps with hangovers as well.
All right. Well, this is a biohacking conference, and how can I biohack my sleep? I mean, you went through a number of tips. How do I biohack my sleep?
So the easiest way to do that is, number 1, start with your wake-up time.
Okay.
Most consistent thing in your sleep schedule is your wake-up time. If you wake up at 6:30 during the week, I want you up at 6:30 on Saturday and 6:30 on Sunday.
That's tough.
I know, it's not fun. I know. I'll give you 25 to 30 minutes leeway, so if you want to sleep till 7, that's fine. But as soon as you sleep more than about a half an hour longer than your normal wake-up time, your whole circadian rhythm wants to shift. So you might have experienced this before, where you stay up late on Friday, sleep in on Saturday. Stay up late on Saturday, sleep in on Sunday. What does your body want to do Sunday night? Stay up late, and Monday morning really stinks. So by keeping it consistent, that's number 1. What it does is, when you get that light in the morning and it reduces the melatonin in the morning, it tells your brain exactly when melatonin is supposed to come on board, and will actually shrink the amount of time that you need to sleep. So you get higher quality in less time, the more consistent your bedtime is, which is a huge hack right there.
So how did you overcome that with teenagers? Because we have kids the same age as, because mine want to sleep in. I mean, my daughter, who's 16, I swear it's like noon before she rolls out of bed on Saturday.
So here's the caveat, is teenagers.
Okay.
Leave them alone and let them sleep. My son will sleep until 12, 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturdays and on Sundays. He's really trying to catch up on his sleep. Now, he goes to bed around 10 o'clock at night. He gets up around 6:30, so he's getting about 8.5 hours. But he's 16 years old. He plays sports. He plays, you know, he's got lots of activity, so his day is really jam-packed. And on Saturday mornings, look, It's not worth the struggle, number one, and number two, they can actually catch up on sleep. As adults, once you hit about age 22, 25, you're really not going to be catching up on a whole lot of sleep, and your circadian rhythm will lock at that point in time. Remember, teenagers are naturally wanting to stay up late and sleep late.
Okay, so teenagers,
let
yes, let them go. Adults, no. Get
Adults,
up on
no.
time.
Exactly.
All right. Darn it. I wish I was a little- no. Okay, so any other biohacks?
Absolutely. So again, strategic napping can be
Okay.
done at certain times during the day to give yourself a little bit more oomph. Especially my Napa latte. I think I talked about that before. And so that's a technique where you actually use caffeine and napping at the same time to be able to, so you drink coffee right before your nap, take a 25-minute nap, boom, you're good for 4 hours. Again, not to be used every day and not to be used for people with insomnia. And then I think the other thing, again, when we were talking about is using our bedroom in order to allow us to sleep better. So some light is okay, but you want to be careful. Light from a television is fine. Light from the devices, not so good because it's so close. You want to make sure you've got the right mattress, right? So one of the things that a lot of people don't think about is, what is the equipment that I'm using for sleep? I believe that sleep is a performance activity, right? And so I'm a runner. If I go for a run in flip-flops and cutoffs with a torn t-shirt and a boombox on my arm, my time's not going to be too good, right? I'll make it from the start to the finish, but it's probably not going to work out so well. But if I've got my Asics on and my dry fit wear, I'm moving quicker. I'm actually more productive in my running. The same holds true with sleep, is if you've got the right bed, pillows, sheets, environment, you will actually sleep better.
So let's talk about that equipment.
Sure.
All right, so there are thousands of different types of mattresses
Yes,
that are
there
available,
are.
and thousands of different types of pillows. And I know that most people go in, maybe sit down on a bed and say, okay, this is it. Are there different, I mean, are there different bed types that are better for different types of people? I mean, some people like firm, some people like soft.
There are. So
what should I look for?
So first of all, it's massively confusing, right? You walk into a retail store, there's 30 rectangles sitting there, they all look exactly the same, and you're relying on the salesperson to tell you what's inside and hope that you can make some sort of association. So number one, it's not a great process to begin with. There is data to show that a little bit firmer surface is better for people with low back pain. When there's more than 100, 150 pound weight difference between the two people, you really have very different support characteristics that are necessary. So as an example, if you've got a lot of weight difference between you and your bed partner, an air bed might actually be better for you because you can change the air baffles inside to make one firmer and one softer. Now, if you don't want to go out and have an air bed, what I have a lot of my patients do is they buy one firm bed and then they add a topper to one side that's only 2 inches of, let's say, latex or foam that's a little squishier. So that way that person kind of gets their, soft but still firm, and this person gets their firm if that's what they're looking for. A lot of it is personal preference, but again, you're thinking about back pain. The other thing that you want to think about is neck pain and upper shoulder pain. If you wake up in the morning with a crick in your neck or kind of, need to stretch out your shoulders, that actually means you need a new pillow, not a new mattress. So I talk to people about pillows all the time, but you need to think about what is your starting sleep position. So if you're a back sleeper, your pillow is going to be very, very thin because you don't want it to pitch your head forward to make it difficult for you to breathe. And if you're a stomach sleeper, you also want it very thin because if it's thick, it's going to push your head all the way to the side and hurt your neck. But side sleepers actually need a thicker pillow to make up for the space between the outside of their shoulder and their ear. So depending upon your starting sleep position, picking the right pillow can actually make a big difference.
I hadn't thought about that because I'm a side sleeper, so I'm always kind of stuffing the pillow up because my shoulders are so broad. No, I'm just kidding. But no, it's just that my head was.
So if you're stuffing your pillow, you need a new pillow.
Yeah.
Like I'm telling you now, and a lot of people don't think about it, but you should be changing your pillow out about every 18 to 24 months. If it's a squishy pillow, if it's one of those memory foam kind of thick block pillows, those can last for about 4 or 5 years usually. But remember, your neck and body changes faster than these materials wear out. No mattresses don't turn to dust one day, and there's no turkey timer on the side that pops and says, hey, it's time to remove my mattress. But your body will really start to tell you. If you're waking up stiff and sore more than 1 or 2 mornings a week, not necessarily from a workout that you did the day before, it's probably time to start looking at your sleep equipment.
So let's say that I'm having troubles, that I'm always waking up tired, or that you're feeling exhausted throughout the day. I mean, this could be sleep apnea, it could be other problems. What would you recommend? I mean, what should somebody do?
So one of the first things I talk to people about is if you're waking up and you're not waking up feeling refreshed, and you've gotten an adequate amount of sleep, then it could be a sleep quality issue. So that's where we look at sleep disorders like apnea, narcolepsy, restless leg syndrome, even insomnia in certain cases. So those are all things that are diagnosed by a physician, specifically a sleep specialist, kind of like me. So if you're waking up consistently unrefreshed, that's definitely something that you're going to want to think about. Another thing is your chronotype. So it turns out that there are these things genetically predetermined in us called chronotypes. So you might not have heard the word before, but people have understood the concept for years. I'm talking about early birds versus night owls. So sometimes when somebody's a night owl, like you said you are, right, you have a tendency to go to bed late, and you still wake up fairly early. But I've got a lot of people who go to bed late and want to wake up late, and that's why they feel exhausted in the morning. So going to sleep in line with your chronotype can turn out to be really important. If people want to learn what their chronotype is, they can take my quiz, which we had everybody here take the quiz.
And we'll put that into the kind of the questions section on this. We'll get that posted up so that you can click on it and take the quiz.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I didn't know what my chronotype was. It said bear, but we were talking about, you know, because I go to bed late, but I get up early.
Right, you're a late bear.
A late bear.
Right, so the chronotypes are lion, which are my early people. They're waking up at 5:30 in the morning.
I don't like that type of people.
I was saying on stage, like, the only thing I hate worse than mornings are morning people.
Yeah, they're always
just
the
too
ones
damn
saying,
chipper.
yeah, they're like, yeah, let's have that meeting at 6 a.m. Are you kidding me?
Right, no thank you.
Yeah.
Those are my lions. My bears, which is what you are, is the majority of the population. 50% of people, they like to get up around 6:30, 7 o'clock. They like to go to bed around 10:30, 11 o'clock. So you're kind of in there somewhere. Then there are the wolves, that's the late night people like me. I never go to bed before midnight. Sometimes it's 1 o'clock in the morning. And I like to sleep a little bit later in the mornings. And then there are my dolphins, and unfortunately they're my problem children. So they're the folks that have insomnia. And so the book that I wrote called The Power of When actually takes your chronotype and teaches you the perfect time of day to do anything. So you don't, it's really kind of cool. It's the ultimate biohack, because if you change the timing in a 24-hour cycle, I can show you exactly when your hormones naturally will be at a point to do a particular activity, whether that's have sex, eat a cheeseburger, run a mile, you name it.
I'll have to read that.
I got one for you, don't worry.
Good. So let's, I guess for a final question. Let's say somebody walks up to you and you only have, 20, 30 seconds to talk to them.
How do they get
and
a
they
better night's
say,
sleep?
look, yeah, Dr. Breus, can you give me just a couple of the main things that I can do to improve my sleep quality, my sleep life?
Absolutely. I'm going to give everybody a 5-step process that everybody can do starting tonight. So step number 1 is stick to one wake-up time. We've talked about it a little bit, but remember, that keeps your circadian rhythm consistent. Step number 2 is to stop caffeine by 2 p.m. Remember, caffeine has a half-life of between 6 and 8 hours, so we don't want it affecting our ability to fall asleep at night. Stopping at 2 will allow at least half of it to be out of our system. Step number 3 has to do with alcohol. Stop alcohol 3 hours before bed. That means if you've had 1, 2, even 3 drinks with your evening meal, you give your body enough time to digest it so it doesn't affect your sleep. Step number 4 has to do with exercise. The best way to improve the quality of your sleep is daily exercise. But some people get a little jazzed up from exercise, so if you can, avoid exercise about 4 hours before bed.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask you, okay, is that in the morning, is that in the evening?
Yeah, just avoid it before bed for sure. And then step number 5 is, I say, give the sun a high five every morning. You get 15 minutes of sunlight in the morning to reset that circadian clock each morning. So remember, step number 1 is one wake-up time. Step number 2, stop alcohol by 2 p.m. Step number 3, stop caffeine by 2 p.m. Step number 3 is stop alcohol 3 hours before bed. Step number 4 is no exercise 4 hours before bed. And step number 5 is to give the sun a high five every morning.
I like that. Just one question off of the, you said get up at the same time. Does that include going to bed at the same time? Is that as important?
It's not as important, right? Because look, on Friday night, you want to go out with your partner, your significant other, you want to go have dinner, movie, whatnot. You're going to stay up a little bit later, but wake up at the same time. I promise it will work.
All right. Well, Dr. Breus, thank you for joining us.
This has been great. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And next week, we'll have another Biohacker series. So we'll see you then. Bye.